Today we're going to talk about bias. Samples that don't represent every individual in the population fairly are said to be biased. Bias is the bane of sampling, the one thing above all to avoid. There is usually no way to fix a biased sample and no way to salvage useful information from it. The best way to avoid bias is to select individuals for the sample at random. The value of deliberately introducing randomness is one of the great insights of statistics. In a voluntary response sample, a large group of individuals is invited to respond, and all who do respond are counted. Voluntary response samples are almost always biased, and so conclusions drawn from them are almost always wrong. Voluntary response samples are often biased towards those with strong opinions or those who are strongly motivated. Since the sample is not representative, the resulting voluntary response bias invalidates the survey. Here's an example. Inside the boxes of a new brand of cereal is a short survey that can be mailed back for free to the manufacturer. The survey asks the consumer if he or she likes the cereal or not. You can see the bias in this particular survey. If you bought the cereal, then you must like the cereal, and those people that only like it will probably respond to this survey. In convenience sampling, we simply include the individuals who are convenient. Unfortunately, this group may not be representative of the population. Convenience sampling is not only a problem for students and other beginning samplers. In fact, it is a widespread problem in the business world. The easiest people for a company to sample are its own customers. Take an example. Human Resources Department of a well-known telecommunications firm is behind schedule on writing a report about the job satisfaction of the company's employees. In an effort to quickly sample some people, the HR manager orders his subordinates to give out paper surveys to anyone you see sitting at their desk, and the survey, completed or not, will be picked up in 10 minutes. Only the completed surveys will be used in the report. Another type of bias is an SRS of an incomplete sampling frame introducing bias because the individuals included may differ from the ones not in the frame. Many of these bad survey designs suffer from undercoverage, in which some portion of the population is not sampled at all or has a smaller representation in the sample than it has in the population. Undercoverage can arise for a number of reasons, but it's always a potential source of bias. An example. A newspaper reporter decided to sample residents of all major metropolitan areas in the entire country. This sampling asked if the residents like living in their city, or are they considering moving, and if so, where. Unfortunately, this survey went over budget and was stopped, and only the east coast of the country was adequately interviewed. Since the population is the major metropolitan areas in the entire country, the west coast was undercoveraged in this particular survey. Watch out for non-respondents. A common and serious potential source of biases for most surveys is non-response bias. No survey succeeds in getting responses from everybody. The problem is that those who don't respond may differ from those who do, and they may differ on just the variables we care about. Don't bore respondents with surveys that go on and on and on and on and on. Surveys that are too long are more likely to be refused, reducing the response rate and biasing all the results. Work hard to avoid influencing responses. Response bias refers to anything in the survey design that influences the responses. For example, the wording of a question can influence the responses. An example. A newspaper reporter randomly sampled households by telephone during various times of the day. The people sampled are within the area of the newspaper's distribution. The newspaper reporter asked, "Are you patriotic in a time of war or armed conflict?" Look for biases in any survey you encounter. There's no way to recover from a biased sample of a survey that asks biased questions. Spend your time and resources reducing bias, and if possibly can, pre-test your survey. Always report your sampling methods in detail. Bias can destroy our ability to gain insights from our sample. Non-response bias can arise when sampled individuals will not or cannot respond. Response bias arises when respondents' answers might be affected by external influences such as question wording, interviewer behavior. Biases can also arise from poor sampling methods. Voluntary response samples are almost always biased and should be avoided and distrusted. Convenience samples are likely to be flawed for similar reasons. Even with a reasonable design, sample frames may not be representative. Undercoverage occurs when individuals from a subgroup of the population are selected less often than they should be. Finally, we must look for bias in any survey we find and be sure to report our methods whenever we perform a survey so that others can evaluate the fairness and accuracy of our results.